Okay, we've got our first applicant. Erica is, before we get to continuing business, why don't we do the new business? Because these folks were held over when last month's meeting got adjourned due to the storm.
Yes.
So we have 24 Aqueduct Street.
Stuart, can you hear me?
I can, Dan.
How are you?
I'm well,
Lisa, how are
sir.
you?
Thank you.
I'm not sure. Is Henry on as well?
He
Yep,
is,
I'm here.
yes.
Okay. Henry, you want to start and just give a little introduction about what the project is?
Yeah, and forgive me because I'm new
Well,
with
you know
this,
what? Actually, before you go, Henry, I think it might make sense if I try to talk a little bit about why you're here today. So today, the project 24 Aqueduct Street is a use variance. And, you know, there's a lot of aspects of this project that are being dealt with in front of the zoning board, but those are not necessarily all matters that the board today is being asked to look at. The reason you're in front of the board today is because it's west of Route 9, which means it's covered by the LWRP, which is the Local Waterfront Revitalization Program. And because of that, it gets a little extra scrutiny. So normally, you know, applications that are getting sent are for, you know, construction projects that are going to be changing significantly what's going to take place, and that's where they provide a lot of commentary. I think it's important to note that in this instance, because it is, you know, going through secret, you do have to get the EAC approval or the EAC review, but it's to matters that pertain to the LWRP. So you submitted, you filled out and submitted what was called a coastal assessment form. And so the responsibility of the EAC today is really to discuss just your project as it pertains to those matters. If they're interested in opining or asking questions about other stuff, they can. Of course, that's their prerogative. But I think that the largest concerns that they have really, as it pertains to reviewing your project, are related to that coastal assessment form. And I would recommend that rather than getting too much into the details, maybe if you can give a brief synopsis and try to stick to the elements that are in that coastal assessment form so that they can make their LWRP decision.
Got it. And I have the form in front of me, and this is the short environmental assessment form that we're talking about, correct?
No, it's called a coastal assessment form. You filled it out and you did submit it.
I filled it out and I submitted it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember it. I'm just trying to find it here on the
On the village website, it's listed as short environmental assessment form. If you look on the agenda for the evening. Yeah,
I'm there. It's a survey, aerial, environmental assessment. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, short.
Yep.
It's called, yeah, it's a.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, so I'm in the process of working with the zoning board to see about converting. I purchased a property a year ago, and there's a illegal apartment in the basement. And when I bought it, I went to the town and I said, hey, I want to fix this thing. So I'm in the process of working with the board, and like so many other people, we got tied up with COVID in March, and you know we've been in front of the board a few times, but I'm asking for an area variance for the existing apartment that I'm proposing. I'm asking for a parking variance, and the main thing is the use variance to convert the 2-family into a 3-family. And as I'm looking at this form, the work, whether we get approved or denied, the work that we're gonna do has nothing to do with the exterior. We're not, you know, adding asphalt, removing, digging. We're not making an addition here. We're working within the confines of the existing building that I purchased a year ago. The aesthetics of the outside, nothing will change. The building is staying exactly as is. The main thing that will change that has to do with the outside is there's a garage, a 2-car garage door that, again, whether I'm approved or not, will be removed, and I'll make that look just like the rest of the building. Other than that, even interior, there's no pipes, there's very minimal electrical work. We're not moving bathrooms. And in the illegal apartment already that I inherited, there's already a bathroom and a kitchen. So I'm not gonna be, again, digging or doing any type of excavation or addition. And I'm just looking at the, I'm not adding any square feet. And I think that about sums it up. I mean, on the form, a lot of the answers were no. We're not going to be, again, doing any basic work outside, and there's going to be no change to the aesthetics of the building. That's basically it.
Hi, Henry.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm Kate. I actually am familiar with the property. I live 2 blocks away, so it's part of my regular walking route around the village. My biggest concern, and I emailed this, I think it would be 2 months at this point, was about the LWRP and just having that filled out. Because when we saw the initial thing originally, it said that the form said it was not west of Route 9, even though it is. So I just, at this point, would like to just see something updated with the actual LWRP form, just to go through your checklist and see that.
Okay.
Because I didn't see a new one. I just saw, I only have the ones that were submitted for the previous meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you're
because
gonna-
on the
you-
short form, yeah, Henry, on the short form EAF, which is what you filled out, that's on the link to the website, there's a question that asks you if you were in the LWRP. And when you answer that yes, then you need to fill the document, but it was mistakenly answered no. So yeah, if we, I think that would be.
All right, yeah, I can update that. Yeah, and again, I apologize because I'm new to this process. I'm not a developer or anything, so yeah. So thank
I
you.
see you filled out, I see you did your best. I took a look at your
Yeah.
documents you posted earlier, and I see, it's been an onerous process, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But
And
it's,
what question was that?
so,
I think it was 5. No. It was, I have to look. Sorry. Let me just put my.
yeah.
Aside from getting that answer corrected, I don't see any consistency issues with the LWRP. So I think just to kind of cut to the chase and save Henry some anxiety, I think we'll probably just provide some comments on what we want to see in terms of space for bicycles. That's a new standard comment we're giving to apartment owners in the village, and Erica can provide the language that we've been using for that. But while we're digging up the form for you, I thought you might want to hear that.
Okay, thank you. And
Yeah.
I mean, if that's all I need to do, then I mean, I can take the time myself to look through the form and look for the specific question that you're looking for, and I can revise that and submit that for the October meeting.
Yeah, I mean, all I would say, Henry, is I do think your parking is a little limited, and you do live in a part of the village that's quite bikeable. So I think it would be, we are asking some people who, owners of multifamily buildings to consider adding bike racks to their buildings. It's relatively inexpensive, and it's also, you're serving your renters. So it's attractive to not only the village, but also just to everybody. And, you could get a bike rack relatively inexpensively. They're, maybe $300, $250 for a really sturdy one. But if you can provide some sort of, I think we would appreciate you considering that, adding that to your property. I understand, you stated in your documents that you're operating at a loss with your snow removal, and I guess you had an unpaid water bill, is from what I read in the documents. But it is something that we are asking owners of multifamilies to consider, and we are passing along that suggestion to the planning board as a comment. So I see that you have, I guess on the top floor, it's a 2-bedroom, then a 1-bedroom on the main floor, and then a studio on the basement.
Well,
is that right?
What I'm calling the main floor or the first floor is like the ground level. And that's right now, there's nothing going on there. That's what I'm trying to convert. On the second floor, there's a 2-bedroom, and on the 3rd floor, there's a 2-bedroom. And it depends on how the people use them. But I mean, there's really 1 bedroom on each, and then either a living room or a bedroom, however they want to use it. But that's it. So again, the main floor or the ground floor right now, or apartment number 1, that's the one that's in question, and that's the one that I'm working with the town. But I have no issue, you know, to do your suggestion, regardless again of what happens at my board meeting. I know for a fact that the people on the 3rd floor, it's a couple, and they both work at Stop and Shop, I think, right down the street. So, you know, maybe they'll be happy to, you know, instead of driving back and forth, save a couple of bucks, ride their bikes and lock them up in, you know, on the property. That's no problem.
I found the question. It is question 5 on the use variance form. The question is the site within the boundaries of the local waterfront revitalization program? It was answered no. And we do have, I'm assuming you have the form, but if you don't, we can forward it to you. But we do have a basic LWRP form that you can just fill out, and then that'll help guide you with everything that you need to do. So if you need that, we can just send that to you.
You know, again, I believe I have it, and I know the form that you're talking about on my application for the variance. But if you have it, I have my email on the Zoom. If you can send it over just to make sure I don't, you know, accidentally omit it or do anything wrong, I'll be happy to get that done for you.
So I'm taking notes here that the applicant will fill out the LWRP. The applicant will consider adding bike racks. And
The applicant will add bike racks. We'll add them.
Yeah, I mean,
awesome.
Our major concern is that your property is right up next to the kill. So we just want to make sure that we're covering everything in relation to that. And it sounds like you're doing everything you need to do. So.
I'm trying.
I'm a biker, so I think the bike rack idea is wonderful.
Awesome.
Not that anybody cares, but you know.
Well, I actually, Dan, I recognize your name because I worked, I think, with your ex-partner, Andrea Castro.
That's right. That's right. Yes, sure.
Yeah, that's right. So you're a local attorney, right?
Yeah. Yes.
You're local to Austining. So
Still
we're
at 30
happy for
State
you
Street.
to know that.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Hi, folks. So I did want to mention to you real quick, I apologize. It appears that the coastal assessment form was not added to the agenda, but it was filled out and added to the zoning agenda. It was supposed to have been put here, so I apologize. That's oversight on mine. I should have checked before the meeting. But if you allow me to share my screen, I can show that to you that he did fill it out. So the issue is on the planning department that we did not get this onto the agenda for you to see it prior to that. So you can see here is the New York State Department of State Coastal Assessment, Coastal Management Program, Coastal Assessment Form, which has a lot of those questions. And if you go to the same place you go to for the agenda for this, but go to the zoning board and go to the very next zoning board meeting, which is on September 8th, you'll find 24 Aqueduct there, and in there you'll be able to find the coastal assessment form, along with some other forms that did not get sent if you're interested. But that form is there.
Thank you, Jaime.
Yeah, so I apologize again.
Okay, so I guess I would ask the other members of the EAC to look that over and let me know if you have any questions in the next week so we can get back to the applicant. But I'm glad to see that we have everything on the record at this point, and I'm also really glad to hear that we're thinking in terms of protecting the adjacent stream by, hopefully offering residents of this property alternative transportation options that aren't adding, the sort of schmutz, as New Yorkers would say, that come with having cars. Bikes are definitely, there's no, runoff issues and oils and other dirty things that are associated with parking and everything. So that's absolutely so great to hear that Henry is going to put bike racks in. I'm really happy about that.
Hi, this is Rita.
I have no idea.
Could you just explain to me the number of parking spots available? Because I got sort of lost with, it's 2 bedrooms here, 2 bedrooms, a studio, it could be 1 bedroom. How many families are you renting this out to?
At the present time, there's 2 families, and because it's a 2-family apartment building, and if I get approved for the 3-family, the third one, the basement, is going to end up being a studio. It's not going to be a bedroom, it's going to be a studio.
But they still need parking. So how many parking spots? Because that's an environmental concern.
Understood. Currently, there's parking for 5. You can fit 6, but according to the actual measurements that the town has given me, you can't, fit them in the I don't know, Dan, what is it, the allotted legal parking size? What
Yeah, we're a little small for 6.
Yeah, we're a little small for 6, so we have parking for 5 though, but you can fit the 6 there, if need be. But again, it's going to all depend on what happens with the town. But
I don't think we anticipate 6 cars, 6 renters being in that area. One's a studio, and then you have a couple of 2 bedrooms. So I don't think we're going.
I don't think you could do. I saw and I seen that. It's. I don't know if it's an EAC issue, but I'm driving. I can't look at any of the plans. But Erica, you and Tom. I mean, a lot of you guys.
So I
see. The plans.
Yes, I can see there is a document attached in the agenda that shows photos of the parking spots, and I can see that there are 2 spots for the studio that are just right off the street, and then there's a driveway that goes down to the building, which it has a setback, right? And so then there's 2 more spots on the bottom left portion of the brick building. The brick building is set back from the adjacent stucco building, which is what? Is that a garage, or is that also part of?
That's the illegal apartment behind that garage door. At one point, it was a garage, but again, the prior owner, not me, had it used to be commercial space. It used to be an illegal apartment, but right where the door is in front of the car. That's what I would be removing that door. And again, whether I'm permitted the 2-family or the 3-family, that garage door would be gone. It would just be, brick with the window there. And then on the 3rd picture, there's a white car. Mm-hmm. Inside that's a garage. That's underneath the street level parking on my property. So that would be parking number 5. And then again, in front of it, somebody can put a car if needed. But again, that doesn't allow for the proper radius and turns.
Right. So that's my concern. You can't park a car behind a car when you're renting apartments. So you can't actually, Jaime, you can explain this, but I'm sort of a little bit concerned about this whole parking thing. That is not.
Yeah, that's before the zoning board now. That's before the zoning board now.
There's a use variance which, in order for him to even have a consideration for the parking variance that he would first need to get approval for the use variance. So he's in front of the zoning board right now for that use variance, and multiple parking variances if that use variance gets moved forward. So certainly, I can tell you that question has been raised, quite a few times. But at this time, the heaviest question in front of them is that use variance, which, as you know, is a very hard thing to get. So.
Right. So I guess my question, I'm not sure it's specific just to this. The EAC doesn't have to decide on the number of parking spots, but the EAC is concerned with environmental issues, and having more cars than a property fits, regardless of whether there's asphalt or any of the other stuff, which is the material that's being used, in my opinion, starts falling into a gray area of when environments are affected, when there's an overdevelopment of parking in an area like this. Because I know that came up. It's a big issue because you're building 3 units into a 2-unit space. Regardless of how you're doing it, you're putting more people into a limited space. So I think as we go forward, we're going to have to really consider, the environmental impact of not only the safety issues that if something happens, you can't park a car behind another because you can't get out. That's the idea, I think, of why you aren't supposed to do that. But there is a shortage of parking, and I don't know what area it falls into, but it is an environmental impact when more cars are necessary, are parked in a smaller space than is allowed. It's just something I think, I don't vote, but it's something for the EAC to consider on this and on other properties when they make suggestions and recommendations.
Rika, we're not reviewing any parking right now. That's not what's in front of us. Not in front of the EAC right now.
Yeah, that was the comment also to the other folks about that it may need to be going forward because that is an environmental impact. It's not just what lots are built out of, but also the numbers of cars on property. So that's also a comment of something we might want to look into going forward.
And we did make that comment, I believe, in our initial review of this, is that, you know, there are a lot of cars for the area. It is adjacent to the Sing Sing Kill, which is now a, you know, recreational area for the village of Ossining. And there is a problem with trash falling into that gulch. You know, naturally it's an area environmentally that collects garbage. And so anytime, you know, you know, yes, the cars are the really low-hanging fruit of environmental issues, but I would, if I were on the planning board, I would be interested in, or, you know, just as a concerned citizen, if I were a neighbor of that property, I would prefer to see that property developed as a 2-family with more bedrooms than a 3-family, because I think that 3 families are going to bring more cars than 2 families.
Okay,
I'm going out. I know I'm going out of the sphere.
We need to bring it back to the application. We have an applicant who last month got adjourned because of the storm. So let's just please deal with what's before the board right now so we can hopefully get him past this. Because remember, we have a zoning board meeting a week from tonight. So if it's possible, we can get this completed so that they can make their determination. Thanks.
Okay. Well,
but the EAC has a right to comment on anything related that they feel is important for the board. They have a right to comment on it.
They most certainly do, Trustee Levin, but again, I would like to try to get this applicant through because he did have an adjournment last week through no fault of any last month. So I'd like to get this moving. If they want to put their comments into their letter, they may, but again,
right. And that's really what that's actually what we're discussing.
We will add that to our letter.
Is there anything else you wish of this applicant?
Did we talk about trash? What the trash?
No, you have that standard comment that you've added. You did not mention that. You may want to mention that.
Because again, as I mentioned before, we do have a problem with trash. Ossining is a windy town. And when there's a lot of people using a dumpster, I'm not sure where your trash plan is, it does tend to blow around. So we do like to see with multifamilies that there is a sort of enclosed structure or trash management plan. I don't know if you've given that any thought.
Actually, no, I honestly haven't, probably not in the detail that you would require. But if you look at, again, the parking pictures, the second picture on the first page, on the right side, right now, I have 4 garbage cans. Each one's labeled 2. It is 2, 1 recyclable and 1 garbage labeled 2. That's for the second floor apartment. And then there's another, you know, another can. It's right over here. It's right where the arrow is, right there. Oops, no, right
here.
Okay.
Because of the car, but I can even send you pictures now. But basically, every tenant has 2 garbages, 1 for garbage and 1 for recyclable.
Yeah, so I think what you're talking about, Erica, is like, you know, the kind of like the Rubbermaid enclosures that you put them in there so that the trash doesn't build up. I think it was in concern, you know, because of your proximity to kill and And obviously, in the street, if trash blows off your property, it's just going to go down into the Sing Sing Kill and eventually into the Hudson River. So considering making sure that there's an enclosure so that, you know, animals can't get into it, it can't get knocked over, the wind doesn't block it down. I have one of those in my house, so I mean, I don't think it's that complicated what you're talking about, correct? Is that along the lines of what you were referring to?
Yeah, I mean, something that could suitably accommodate the trash for the building. That's, you know, a structure. And then so are the tenants responsible for bringing their own garbage to the curb on garbage night, or is there?
No, the tenants are responsible to bring everything to the top. And underneath the stairs, you can't see it, but underneath the stairs outside, there's actually like an opening there. I can probably, again, just get rid of these garbage cans, invest into like a Rubbermaid with a lid and a hinge, and I can probably put something underneath the stairs and outside that's a little bit less prone to wind, and it has a lid. I mean, again, that I think is a very inexpensive fix at the Home Depot. So if that's what if that would work, then I'll do that too. That's not a problem.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as long as it's, accommodating the tenants, and it's, neat and not creating more, a point source of trash in the area, we definitely would appreciate that. Thank you.
No, agreed, and no problem. And even if the sink kill wasn't an issue, I would not want to have garbage all over the property anyway. So again, we can kill two birds with one stone.
Thank you so much. We like to hear that.
It's common sense, no problem.
Okay, are there any other questions for the applicant, or can we let him go?
That's
None
all
from
I have.
me.
Thanks.
All right.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry and Dan.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, and I'll get going on these things. When I do any of this, do I need to send pictures to anybody, or like what's the next step from here?
So the next step is they're going to write a letter. It's going to get sent to the zoning board, and depending on the results of the zoning board, obviously it would get dealt with, and if it's approved, it would get dealt with through conditions to the approval.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
You too. Okay, they are off.
Can we quickly talk a little bit further about whether or not the planning board is considering, is this applicant for sure going through as a legalization of the
I will say it's not in front of the planning board, it's in front of the zoning board, but I want to try to say this in like the best legal framework that I can. So Stuart, please prevent me from making any wrong statements, but a use variance is extremely hard to get. And so it is the obligation of the zoning board to examine the facts of the case that's in front of them and to make a determination as to whether or not they meet all the points that they're required to meet by law in order to grant a use variance. They are very hard to get. The facts of this case have been looked at, and he's now on his 4th or 5th meeting.
Okay.
So I could certainly give my opinion of what I think is going to happen, but I don't think that's a good idea.
Okay. Well, I certainly appreciate his willingness to, move ahead with our suggestions.
He's going through the process this far, but that just because he's gone this long does not reflect that it's likely for him to get approved, or unlikely to be approved for that matter. So don't confer any sense that he's been here such a long time, he's definitely going to go through. It confers nothing one way or the other. I can only tell you that he's come back repeatedly under the request of new information or concerns about the quality of the information that was submitted.
Okay, thank you. Sort of apropos, this gentleman's application is talking about if we want to have I know that one of the agenda items is the bike racks. So do we have a standard that we want to consider? Because bike racks can be many different things. Do we want to have it? What we could do is we can have recommended. So it's not, extremely onerous, especially, this gentleman has a 3-family. It's not, a tremendous property. So, but we would like to see something that will, be stable and resist the,
I would say that the best bike racks are the ones that get used. And so,
okay.
I would, encourage that you're flexible with people in terms of how they provide those bike racks. I don't have a bike rack, but I keep all my stuff under a gazebo in the backyard. I have like 4 bikes back there. It's nice, it's safe. I don't have to lock it up. That works for me. There are other people that probably don't want to leave their bikes outside to, unless they're going to be covered and locked up. And, there are other areas where you don't need a bike rack at all. You just need a cover. And then, obviously commercial properties need a bike that's going to probably sit somewhere in the public right away on the sidewalk. And it has to be something that's like visible and that you can clearly see. So I think that, some places need one thing, some places need other things. And if you're encouraging bike racks.
Hyman, what would be the best way? This is for me always like how does one get started conversation. What would be the best way for DPW, for somebody to sit there and put this in as an initiative that the EAC is recommending as an advisory, and that maybe they can write a proposal of their ideal scenario, and maybe we can have Paul and you have added as an initiative. I know there's a dozen initiatives on our to-do list, and say, look, here is sort of a time frame. We can look at what size properties we would recommend this for, where we would recommend. Possibly if it's smaller landowners, maybe there's an incentive. If they put recommended bike racks, maybe there's 3 or 4 that you guys would recommend they can choose from. If they put it, maybe we give them a discount off some application fee or something. Is there a way, instead of this group just sort of working in a vacuum, to possibly say, here's what we would like, and you guys help us figure out how to make it happen? Because I don't know if this group can really legitimately say more than this is what we would like.
So I actually have I have good news for the group on that front. We've just completed interviews on identifying someone to do a mobility study. So the mobility study is going to include looking at parking on 9. It's going to look at the parking lots. It's also going to look at the use of bikes and bike racks, the availability of bike racks. So part of the mobility study, which I think is going to start maybe later this, or we look at the enter into contract later this month. Stuart, am I correct about that? With Nelson Nygaard?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Resolution will be on tomorrow night.
Yeah, so that's going to start soon, and part of that process will be looking at bike racks. So the bad news is when I was asked to go and see if we have any bike racks, my first response was, we don't have any bike racks. My second response was, oh, we do have a bike rack at the community center. I didn't realize it was there. And then we have one in front of the post office. So there's not a lot of bike racks in there.
I think there's also one across from 16 Crowley, isn't there? I thought that there was one.
There might be. Yeah, they're not well known, and they're not well used.
I think it holds like 3 bicycles. I think it's small, like a 3. Well, anyway, whatever.
Yeah. So I think that Nelson Nygaard will help put together some proposals, plans on how we can better integrate bike racks into the whole design process. And then once we have a little bit more to work with, I look forward to bringing that back to this group so you can look at the recommendations and give your opinion on your thoughts as to what you think about them. If they fit, they make sense.
So what is a mobility study?
Well, transportation and mobility, parking, it's so the parking obviously deals with the parking on you know, where it's publicly available. Mobility is how people get around, whether that's buses, cars, bikes, and, you know, transportation is just, you know, it's looking at people walking across the street. It's looking at, you know, cars, speed, crash, data, all sorts of different stuff. So we have a lot of connection to what we needed for the comprehensive plan, but it's going to be more focused really on figuring out how we can better allocate our parking resources, and just, you know, figuring out ways for people to get around the village and, you know, things of that nature. Right? Parking lots are a big part of it. Downtown parking, Croton Avenue, access to Croton Avenue, big piece of that.
Okay.
And 9.
So Jaime, if they wanted to have some input now, rather than wait till the mobility study is completed and then comment on it, is there an opportunity for the chair of the EAC to gather some thoughts, a white paper, send it over to village manager, yourself and Stuart, so that there's some documented request that says we would be very interested, based on all the things that we see for environmental purposes, here are some of our thoughts. A white paper, a list of
Yeah,
thoughts.
you know, I think, I mean, that's possible.
Want it here or there.
Yeah, that's possible, but I don't think it's necessary in this instance because there's a significant community engagement process that needs to take place as a part of this project. So there's going to be an obligation for the consultant to come in and, you know, reach out to the community in general and also to stakeholders like the EAC specifically to get their input on it. So I don't think that the EAC really needs to do anything on their end just yet to initiate that conversation, because the consultants will have to do that all on their own. So they're going to be engaged as part of this process. I don't want to add extra work to the EAC at this stage. I would say, you know, let's wait until the consultant's on board and set those conversations up.
When will the mobility study be done?
I think that, you know, if they get hired in September, the goal is to have it done sometime in the spring, you know, around the same time that the comprehensive plan is done. So we're talking about maybe a 6-month period.
Okay.
Thereabouts. It's good news, though. I mean, I think it's really good news.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
And just so y'all know, I don't want to make it seem like, I don't think I made it seem like this, but it didn't have anything to do with me. It's Maddie put together this stuff. She's been working on this for an RFP for a while. Maddie's the assistant manager, so a lot of this stuff came out of the manager's office, and it's really good. So it's exciting.
Does anybody else have anything more they want to add about bike racks? I mean, you know, certainly supermarkets will be awesome.
I would just reiterate with what Jaime said. I think flexibility is important, and to avoid trying to lock up, you know, owners to a certain standard. I think, like you said, anyone that gets used or anyone that could, anyway, the more bike racks we can get out there and the more, you know, bike storage we can get into the apartments, the better.
My only concern with this particular property would be they're already struggling with car spots. So I hope you
know, it's kind of a weird property. So you know, they're not here anymore. I will try to speak a little bit more freely about the parking. They have the ability to do some tandem parking in there, but that's not allowed under the code. So they actually have 6 spaces now with a 2, you know, they have a garage where you can fit a car inside, and then you can fit a car in front of the garage, and you can fit 2 cars in front of the house, and then you can fit 2 cars in front of the, like right off the sidewalk where the curb cut is. So there's actually space, you know, for 6 cars, fit kind of tight as long as one of them's tucked in. It doesn't need to get out immediately. So, you know, it's a weird situation. The code does not allow tandem parking, and I think that's a sensible, you know, decision to make in a place where nobody really uses tandem parking. You know, but I would caution, you know, being too concerned about the parking right now, because they have a much bigger hurdle to get over with the use variance. That, as I've said, they've been in front of the zoning board like 4 times, and every time they get there, they have to adjourn before the zoning board is allowed to make a decision because they feel like there might be more information they could bring next time that would, better their chances of getting an approval. So
I would also think on the way that the parking was configured, that the garage would likely be used for bikes or other items and not storing a vehicle. Because whoever's in the garage is going to have a hard time getting out.
His initial application said that it was parking. And so he was told, no, that's not going to work as parking. So how he uses it, I mean, he's certainly not using his parking right now, I can tell you. I was on the site like a week ago, and it's locked up. So it's not being used as parking currently, although it theoretically could. He said that the ground floor is empty. I believe him. I think that the building inspector has been on the property, so he did take over the property. It was vacant when he took it over. He never filled it. And he is, going through the legal channels, but, again, zoning variances are very hard to get. I have heard that, there have been periods of time where it was easier to get zoning variances, or maybe they were not getting as hard looks, depending on who was overseeing the process. But it's been pretty hard to get zoning variances, at least over the past few years. And they're getting looked at really closely now. The zoning board currently is definitely being very careful about adhering to the rules of the law, especially considering the fact that we're going through a comprehensive plan process. So if there's, a problem that's pervasive in a neighborhood, that's not a variant. That's not a use variance case. That's a rezoning case. And so that stuff is getting looked at now as part of the comp plan. So does that help at all explain?
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking at the time now. If there was anything else, I don't think there is based on the agenda, but if anything else that required the quorum, could we go through that? Because I think I'm going to have to drop off at 8:30 tonight.
Yes, let's do that. Maybe Stuart, do we need to talk about local wetlands on the quorum?
Well, I don't think you need to discuss it tonight. Planning board is completing or has completed a letter to the Board of Trustees, which will go over to them in the next couple of days, and it will probably next be before the Board of Trustees for the work session on the, I think, the 9th of September.
So are we looking at, what's the timeline for passage of the law, do we think?
Well, if there's a discussion on the 9th and the board is pleased with how the legislation looks at that time, they would call for a public hearing on the at the meeting of the 16th. The public hearing would likely be held on October the 7th. And if the public hearing is closed at that point and the board is in approval, then there could be a vote for the legislation as early as November the 4th. And then it would probably be on the books. It would certainly then be on the books by the end of the month of November.
Okay.
I would note that I think that we really started this process in earnest in May. That's a pretty quick turnaround to get a wetlands ordinance on the book.
Yeah.
No small part from an extremely heavy lift from Stuart, as well as a bunch of other people. So it's
Okay. Thank you, Stuart.
No problem.
Keep moving, Stuart.
It's moving. You folks may find it perhaps somewhat apropos that if the local law is passed, one of the first things that may well come before the planning board relating to wetlands is in fact Birchbrook Manor. So it's the circle.
I heard that laugh. I heard that laugh.
Oh, Erica, are you smiling?
The circle comes around. So we'll see, because the only way it's grandfathered in from the old law is if there's a final determination. And as to that particular project, there has not been a final determination, only preliminary. So they may well be back and most likely would be back for that.
Yeah, that's really interesting that it circles that way. I didn't even realize that, to be honest with you, until you
Oh, no,
mentioned it,
I
Stuart.
did. I did.
Wow.
I did.
Wow.
So that's.
I mean, that was not intentional, but it's just interesting. That's
Well,
all.
no, I had to explain that to the attorney that it was not intentional. But
No, it absolutely wasn't.
I know.
This
But
is
in
the
any
first
event,
I'm actually hearing of it.
in any event, that's where it is. There were a few suggestions by the planning board, and what they will be is they'll be in a letter to the Board of Trustees. It's not. There were a couple of let's call them minor tweaks in terms of the authority of the planning board. Originally, the legislation had that they could actually hand out fines. That will not be in there. It will now go back to the Justice Court. But the planning board will be authorized to basically find that someone is not complying and basically get them to comply. There will also be certain provisions with regard to essentially having notice on people's lawns that, this is, or properties lawns, that this property is subject to a wetlands application. There is similar legislation that's going to be coming back to the board as to other land use boards, but that will, expand that there. So that's all in there. As I said, there are some comments from the planning board that I'm sure the Board of Trustees will consider, but the legislation is, I think pretty close to where it will be. And I would expect that if not, probably not this week, but probably the mid part of next week, the revised version of Local Law 7 will be up on the website, on the Corporation Council's website, if anyone wants to view it. But it's pretty close to what was presented to you folks back then, and will be discussed with the Board of Trustees hopefully on the 9th of September.
Great. And Stuart, if I may just ask you, not related to wetlands, thank you for, that was sort of a surprise. I just had not even thought about that. But could you just let this group know, do you have any more knowledge based on executive order when we does this board, can it continue on Zoom for its meetings, or does it have to move back to meetings physically? How does that work with the executive order?
We'll know more after September 4th, Trustee Levin. If the executive order allowing for suspension of the open meeting rules is not continued, I expect that it will be. But if it is not continued, then the EAC would meet in person, and what we're looking at is the location. My suspicion is that we could still do it at the operations center with appropriate social distancing. The concern is how many members of the public, if there is an application, would want to physically attend. We have to see what the capacity would be, because the maximum capacity for indoor is 50, but it's 50% of the capacity. So if your capacity in your room is only 30, you can't have more than 15. And if you figure that the EAC could be as many as 7 members, that's 7 plus staff, it already comes back. So we have to figure that out. It's possible it may have to go to the rec center. We'll see about that. I should point out that even if the suspension in the local laws is not continued, teleconferencing is permitted for public meetings. The difference, however, is that if you do a public meeting through teleconference, your notice must include where you are doing the teleconference from. And that is so that members of the public could actually go to that location. I'm not sure if some of you would necessarily want folks coming to your home or even knowing what your home address is. So I point that out. So we will have to, see what it is. My expectation, though, is that given, everything, that I do believe that the governor will extend it probably at least for another 30 days into October. which would mean that then you can continue going via Zoom and do it that way. But we will know more at the very end of this week or over this weekend, which is traditionally when the governor issues something that is expiring, but probably Friday of this week or maybe Saturday or Sunday. And when that happens, I'll notify you and obviously Jaime and Jamie Kane. So it's possible this may be your last by Zoom, but my guess is that it will not be.
Thank you, Stuart. I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood to be on the lookout for the upcoming emails for all our boards, for our Board of Trustees. We're all sort of waiting to hear, but are already planning how to have public meetings. So thanks for all the work, Stuart.
No
This is
problem.
a lot of work.
Yes, thanks, Stuart. I'll keep an eye out for that. I'm getting buzzed. My wife's starting her call upstairs now, so I'm going to go give her a hand with the kids. So I'm going to drop off, guys. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
It looks like the last item on our agenda is open space inventory. I'm not sure if we have anything more to go. I know Kate did so much, and I haven't had a chance to review it since you sent it to me. So I'm not sure if you want to.
I'm just going to add a couple of things. It's not anything major. I just wanted to give you guys an update on where I'm going with things and how we're doing. So I've been attending the comp plan meetings every month. So I've been getting an idea of what the village is thinking about, the directions they want to go, more open space that I was not aware of, names that I didn't know about, and little like hidden places that weren't on my radar before. So I've looked through the old comp plan, and we had the waterfront meeting a week and a half ago, I think at this point, almost 2 weeks ago, for the upcoming comp plan. So it's kind of giving me more ideas about how to approach the open space inventory. So I'm going to send everybody what I've updated at this point. I've gotten that big document down to like 5-6 pages. So it's a lot more compressed, more to the point. And I've been working on my GIS skills. So gonna have a couple of maps in there too, so that we can get an idea of elevation and work with more, of the resources in the village. And then once I have it all done, it's just up to you guys to let me know, do you agree? Do you disagree? Did I miss something? Along those lines. So sometime in the next week and a half, I'll have a more finalized version of the report with a couple of maps in there too, so that you can look over what we have, and then, just let me know what you think. I kind of like the fact that we're doing this now with the comp plan, because it's something that we can do together and make sure that we're on the same page with as well. Something that did come up in the meeting for the comp plan in regards to open space was the possibility of extending the walkway by the waterfront, and the fact that we are we are limited with Sing Sing and the powerhouse. So something, not that it can be addressed now, but when we talk to, I forget the name of the it's not Colored Sessions.
BFJ?
Yes, thank you. What we could possibly propose as far as extending that walkway. Because I know that was a big part of open space planning and public use planning. So these are possibly things that, as I go through the rest of the open space inventory write-up, that we could start thinking about getting the ball rolling on, possibly coming up with ideas on how to actually have these walkways and actually make that waterfront walkway that's been talked about for so many years and is addressed in the comp plans. See if we can actually make that happen in the future.
That would be great.
I mean, it was brought up that because we have those barriers, that will be an issue of land ownership, just getting around those physical barriers. So it's things that we could possibly just think about. Maybe just be creative in how we might want to suggest future projects, just so that we can, make the waterfront more welcoming. And that
I
can
just
be
want
part
to, I
of
just
this.
want to remind everybody that as an EAC, you'll be probably included, I would assume, as stakeholders or your input. You know, there will be a time for input. As individuals who live here, if you go on the website, there are 3 different kinds of surveys you could take. And I filled one out myself. So I would encourage all of you as individuals and residents of the community and members of the community to please go online and fill out. Those surveys are going to be really important. That's what they're using for data input. So it's on the website,
Yeah.
and I think there are 3 different types of surveys that you can do. There's like a wall. Anyway, please go and look and participate in those and share it with your friends and encourage them as well and your neighbors. That would be really helpful for the committee and the consultants for input on how people want their village to look and feel, you know, for the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah,
I
so
filled out
the
a
public
couple.
survey is closed, but Ideas Wall is still open and the interactive map is still open. There's a lot of information you can put in there. So
Yeah, I did do the public survey when it was open. So I did, like, when it first opened up. So I went through all the questions, and my husband and I both filled them out individually, and it was really cool. So yeah, so that meeting from the other day for the comp plan, I did take some notes. So I'm going to type up some stuff and I'll send it around. And now I think is an opportunity, like, that they want some feedback. If there's anything that we might want to suggest to them. I know there's another meeting that they said we probably would have in the coming weeks. But we should start looking through, and if you don't have the updated draft, I can send it to you. But they did send us a draft of the chapter, the waterfront chapter. So if there's anything that we might want to suggest to them, I'm going to write up an email and I'll send it around. So if people want to include notes or any comments before I send it to them, let's do it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Kate. Okay, so I'll put together a letter with our comments for the gentleman from 24 Aqueduct and send that along to Jamie. My comments are: the applicant will add bike racks. They're concerned, there's concern about the pollution from too many cars on the property. And that the applicant has agreed to add garbage storage to accommodate a garbage can and recycling can for each unit. So that's 6 cans. I think that we should shoot for one single storage unit rather than several multiples. Or what do you think?
you know, I want to throw something out. I just like as a thought for everyone here, and not to sway any of the comments that you're going to send to 24 Aqueduct or really how you feel about anything, but the village pays a lot of money to put in infrastructure for streets. Those streets, when they have no cars on them, when they're just used as streets, even though they have parking available on them, basically what we're doing is we're paying for a vacant parking lot. And so the perception that there is no parking in the neighborhood may be disconnected from reality. And so there is certainly one environmental way of looking at things to say that, well, too many cars on the street is bad. But I think there's certainly another argument to be made that if that street surface is being used as a parking space, instead of just being an empty piece of blacktop, and cars are going there rather than going somewhere else, it's going to create more impervious surface somewhere else, that it in fact might be a little bit more environmental to get those streets used up as much as they can, as often as they can, rather than creating really wide, suburban lanes that sit vacant because everybody parks their cars on street.
This is just a very tight street, though. I'm
not saying necessarily for this street. The street only has parking on one side of the street.
Right.
It's a tight street. It has 2 ways, and there are challenges over there. But I did go and talk. I walked the street, and I asked somebody who parks on the far end over by 9, and I asked him. I said, because he was pulling into a parking lot for his building. I asked him about the parking over there, and he says, "Oh, it's parking's crazy. everybody here has like 3 cars, and we have, you know, spaces here, but it's never enough. And I said, well, that's interesting. I said, man, that's rough. So can you find parking? He says, oh, I have to search for parking all over the place. And I'm like, okay. I said, where do you go? He says, I got to park down the street. And I said, so like, how often do you have to walk past the Aqueduct to park? Because Aqueduct Street is, you know, on one end is Aqueduct, the other is 9A. And it's not a really long block, but it, you know, it's a decent sized block. And so I asked him, so how many times do you have to park past the Aqueduct? And he was like, never. And I was like, okay, but you just said there's a parking problem. So, but to him, a parking problem means I gotta walk all the way from one end of the block to the other.
The problem is that it's not in front of his house.
Yeah, so I just want to note that while I'm certain that there are places where you can't get parking within a block, within a 2-minute walk. But if the issue is that parking is 2 minutes away,
then it's not an issue.
Maybe it's not a parking issue. It's just a convenience issue. Yeah. And so if we're concerned about convenience and building infrastructure for convenience, then we should say that. But if we're talking about environmentalism, I don't know that there's a real environmental case to say that people shouldn't have to walk 2 minutes to find parking. I don't know that I personally agree with it. I am open to, you know, any other opinion on this.
I'm from Brooklyn, and sometimes you have to park 5, 6, 7 blocks away from where you live. So I'm used to the idea of having to walk. So the idea of a 2-minute walk, I'm not hearing that, you know, as an inconvenience. But knowing the area where this particular property is, parking, I can't speak for that block specifically, but parking around that area is problematic. Yeah. What I do see a lot of are people parking specifically where it says, do not park from here to corner. You know, and this is something in that area near Aqueduct, near North Malcolm, near parts of Broadway, that this is happening frequently. So there is the issue of parking, the environmental aspect of it. You know, we can sit and nitpick about all of that, and you know, I'm sure we can make an argument somewhere. But there are larger issues of parking just around the area.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, and
that might be taken care of in the mobility.
So the mobility study is going to look at some of that stuff, because one of the things that I've only been here during COVID, so I don't have a full grasp of how parking is. But every time I've been there in the evening, and I've never been there real late, but I've been there, 5, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. There's no parking there's no cars in the community center, right? And so that we're paying for that parking lot that's vacant, except for during the day. And so, there are other public garages that are public parking lots that are heavily used during the day, but maybe not as heavily used at night. And so the mobility study is going to look at the allocation of those spaces, what times of the day they're used, who's using them, whether they're open to anybody or they're free parking. So we're going to look at all that stuff. But my guess is that even though there's this perception that's out there that parking in the downtown is impossible, parking on Branch is impossible, parking in Aqueduct is impossible, I think that it's probably somewhere in the middle. It's not great, but it's not horrible either. And management should be able to correct some of those problems. And what else is it?
Once the town becomes attractive enough, the parking is less of an issue, like Kate said, in different parts where people really desire to live there, they're willing to walk further. And, as the village of Ossining becomes more desirable to live in, people are going to just suck it up and deal with walking a little bit further. For me, with this spot in particular is the location to the stream. And, with cars, when you have a bike, you don't have garbage falling out of your bike by accident. And then you forgetting it's your garbage and it just stays in the nature strip. And then the rain comes and it just blows it into the gulch. Cars are containers and people have garbage in there. And so it's not, it is it is a valid environmental concern. And, I know we don't have the power to control, how this building is going to be laid out. But, if it were in a dream world, I think, less cars any way they can make less cars there is more desirable for that hyper micro location, just adjacent to,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And then, by the way, there's also a big lot that is used for some storage of commercial vehicles, but it has a lot of space on it. But I'm not so sure that they're actually able to rent spaces out to the local people. I asked them if they are able to rent it to anybody in the neighborhood, and it doesn't appear that they don't think that they can. And so that's another one of those fixes that maybe we need to allow for people to rent spaces to other people in the neighborhood, you know, to help with that. So
it's a great way to make money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, May.
I mean, overhead is zero, really. It's, you know, I think if people understood the value of that, I think they would realize that it's, you know, it's worth their while. You just need to have people who are willing to pay for a parking space.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I'm still getting I'm getting used to the rules here in Austin. They're much more permissive. In Yonkers, where I'm from, you can't run a private parking lot. It's not legal. There's no permissible way to run a private parking lot. So you can basically build a parking lot and you can charge to your tenants. You can't open it up to the general public. So even if you have empty spaces and there's no parking on the street, you're not actually able to rent it to anybody who's not in your building. It's
I wonder why.
It's weird. So
okay.
Because then you would end up with what I have next door to me.
You have private. You have, like, Austin allows private parking lots.
I have a private parking lot next to me, and they are beyond what I think would be permissible. So.
They may already be beyond what's permissible.
Jessica, you look like you want to say something.
Oh yeah, I just had a question about the mobility study. Is that going to be just for downtown, or are they looking at the village?
No, they're looking at Upper Croton and 9 in downtown and the waterfront. So, but I think that there is a desire to actually look a little beyond that as well. You know, one of the things that came up in the comprehensive plan, just looking at the mobility questions about the challenges of, if you live on the east side of town, it's very hard to get to the waterfront if you're using public transportation, because the buses kind of, they get to 9 and then they cut, right? So you have to take like 2 buses to get from the east side to the waterfront. You'd have to change in the downtown. So it's kind of looking at, you know, public access from the east side, which is not necessarily a big part of the mobility study, but connects, because we do want to make sure that people can get to the train station and the waterfront if we're not being adequately served by the MTA. So there's a piece of that. The focus is certainly on like Route 9 because it's our busiest corridor that's not like 9A, not a highway. And then of course, most of our parking facilities are in the downtown or by the waterfront. So because we're looking at parking facilities and we're looking at, you know, traffic, car accidents, it's going to be in that area, but it is also looking at Croton.
That's exciting. There's a lot.
It really is. It really is. It's kismet, you know? It's like we're talking about bikes and mobility and problems, then it's like, oh yeah, we have this grant that it's going to pay for transportation. We should do the transportation stuff.
So it was a grant. That's great.
It's funded by grants, half funded by grants. So there's a match, a 50% match, but half of it's going to be paid for by the state, and it's good. Nelson Nygaard has a lot of experience. They have a really cool community engagement group that they're working with, so bilingual group. So it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to get a really good output from that. So very excited.
Cool. Well, thanks so much. I have nothing more to add. I will send the letter with the couple of things that we talked about to Jamie to integrate into a letter to the planning board or whoever. Yeah.
Yeah. One last thing. You know, I'm in town. Like, I'm in Village every day. So if any of y'all are open to eating lunch, to meet for the first time in person, I would love to. You know, I'll buy you a sandwich. I'm starting to meet people in person now, so you know, I'd really love to meet y'all.
Well, it's good to know.
Sorry.
You see just how short I am in real life. You know what I mean?
Me too.
I like short people. Short people are wonderful. I'm not short.
It's tough to move to such a socially active town during a socially inactive time.
Yeah, it's funny.
And that's actually something I'm thinking about with that mobility study is I'm wondering how much COVID might impact what they find. Maybe not much at all. Who knows?
I don't know. I mean, bikes were really getting big there for a while, and then it got to be 90 degrees every day, and it's like, who wants to ride a bike in 90 degrees? So
it's getting cooler now.
It's getting cooler, so I'm looking forward to getting back on my bike. Because the last few times I got on my bike, about 30 minutes in, I'm having like a heat stroke. My face is flushed. It was not. My kids are like, oh, I don't want to be here. So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Guys, I'm getting the stink eye over here. I have to go.
Okay.
Bye.
All right.
Take
it easy.
Have
Good
a
night, everyone.
Good night.
All right.